You ready to film another exciting episode of Real Good at Doing Stuff?
I can't wait.
Gotta be more exciting.
I can't wait.
Okay, good. There we go.
Alright, can you stuff do? It's that time, it's time again for another super exciting installment of Real Good at Doing Stuff. Today, we're back at tuning. All that stuff sucks. PRI's over with. We're done with that crap for another year. No more. So today we're going to talk about a race from a few weeks ago at Bradenton, Florida. And we're going to talk about a wheelie problem and what caused that wheelie. And the vehicle that we're going to talk about today is Ray Morton's Maximus full-size Chevrolet pick-em-up truck. It's real pretty. It's got black paint on it. It's twin turbulated, big block Chevrolet. Shoots fire out of it sometimes. It's just over the top.
You know, when I see a car like this, first thing I do is I say, would you look at this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Tons of power. Twin 98s, alcohol, Holley fuel injection, profiler, traction control. That's the basics. We're going to talk about one specific wheelie. This is not the cause of all wheelies. Wheelies happen for a multitude of reasons. And maybe we'll talk about some of those other reasons on different days. But today we're going to talk about what caused this particular wheelie. To do that, let's get started. Let's watch this wheelie from a couple angles. I need more GoPros. I don't have enough. I need like 10 million GoPros so I can enhance the excitement of this channel. But right now I don't have but 3. And Justin Martin hogged all those all weekend long. He didn't let Ray have any of them. Anyhow, let's watch these wheelies and see if we can figure out what caused this to happen. Here we go. All right, exciting wheelies. God, that's terrible. Anyhow, let's talk about what caused that first one. And it may be a little counterintuitive, but what really caused this ball to get rolling was the truck struck the tires about 3/10 in. If we look at our Davis data here, drive shaft data, right before 3/10 we lose the tire. It is over with. This truck is tough to tune. It's 58+% on the nose and 115-inch wheelbase, I believe. So when the track's a little iffy in the heat, it can be a trick. And we made some changes later on and kind of fixed that or made it a little better, given the situation, and managed to win the race. But this happened before we kind of figured out what was going on. And anyhow, we struck the tires right before 3/10, and believe it or not, the profiler caught it, and we kept on going down the track. If you look in the video, you could almost be forgiven for not realizing that it spun, because it It kept going. Ray didn't have to lift, and it went right on down the track. Now, that's generally not what I would consider a realistic expectation from your traction control. I don't care what brand you got. I generally tell people in the first, 8/10 or whatever, the TC's not going to do anything. Occasionally it does, though, and this is one of those cases. It stopped it and kept on trucking. But that got us into other trouble elsewhere. Let's look at some Holley data and see if we can figure out, take a look at things. So, yeah, right before 3/10, the profiler catches this thing, jerks the timing, kills the motor. You can see we go from, where are we at here? Let me move my podcasting crap out of the way so I can see. We're at this point, we're at 5,300 at 3/10 in, and the effect of that, dropping holes, we have pretty serious corrections going on here. Pulls the motor down to 3,400 RPM. All right. So that stops our forward progress for a little bit. So about 6/10 or so, all that comes back in, raging back in, right? Now, if we look at the effect of what that did, let's look at, let's see here, what do we got in drag race? All right, okay, here's our drive shaft, up and then right back down. Let's look at the G data. All right, so when it lets go, we're at about 1.6. We're just starting to put power in. Believe it or not, it's still pulling pretty good G, still pulling 0.7 tenths while it's in traction control, right? And then it comes right back. All right, let's look at rear shock travel. All right, it's on its way up, then kind of pauses, and then goes back to its. This is how this truck normally looks. It's got a lot of extension. And here, look at the front. The front comes up, drops when we lose a tire, and then starts getting slammed back up. Okay. Now, the biggest thing, if we look at something that's not in here. Boost. All right. The main cause of all this is that when we got in our spot here, the boost stops, but the target boost does not. Our target boost just keeps on going, right? And hopefully one of these days, this is something that if we can get all these boxes talking to each other, and I can get the right people at Holley to listen, we can come up with a way to stop this thing. We need a pause button on our boost controller, or some kind of strategy to manage that a little better. But that requires communication between these various electronic doodads that we have on all these race cars. All right, so the result of this is that our target boost keeps on trucking because it doesn't know that anything's happened, right? And then when the motor comes back to life, we overboost, right? Right about here, we're ahead of where we wanted to be because we got underneath the wastegate, everything stopped, and then the dome keeps going. We all of a sudden throw a bunch of power at this thing, and this thing kind of overboosts and then kind of tries to settle out, but it's too late. Now what's happened is we've kind of lost all our momentum here, and then we're just going to throw everything at it right here. Well, that results in a somewhat predictable wheelie. If we look at our pitch data, we're good to right here, and all of a sudden we take off, or to the moon. And then Ray lets out. Then he was going to do it again one time. Liked it so much the first time, he thought, I'll just try this one more time, see if it works out. All right. So anyhow, the root cause is that we got we got off our path, and then we threw a bunch of power in it at one time when the truck is not ready for it. Now, if we look at a similar pass later on in the day, This is a pass that had very similar power application intended, right? If you look at our boost, we're leaving pretty much exactly the same, right? On this pass, we go right down the track as intended. Now you look here, the boost is where we stumbled. This thing on the correct pass, that didn't happen. So the boost just keeps rising as it should. The truck keeps the separation keeps happening like it should. This truck, the way it is, there's not a whole lot of front end travel. There's a lot of rear end travel. So as it goes down the track, the pitch is actually gonna do like this. The back of the truck comes up more than the front does, right? So anyhow, you can see right here our boost between the two is 2 pounds different already right here, and that's because when this thing recovers from that wheel spin, it throws all this boost at it inadvertently because we're not in control here, and there you go, we're off to the races. And another thing that does is that puts the motor ahead. There are a lot of factors in this that kind of all add up to we're going to wheelie. Here's another one. If we look at our converter charge pressure right here, when this thing comes back to life, it's higher than it was intended to be. This has got my converter pressure management system on it, which works great. But when this thing got out of whack here, we got another factor is that we've got another 15 or 20 pounds of pressure in here because we're just flashing the motor so hard right here, and that tightens things up and also causes the front to come up. So all these things stack up into one big problem. When this thing slammed down, it jacked up the front end pretty good. Ray had to spend the rest of the weekend fiberglass and everything back together, which he did. He got it all patched up and managed to win the race. But I just want you to understand what caused this. Like I say, if you look at these two passes, we're trying to do the same thing. All right, the only difference is this one spun and jacked everything up, right? Now you could simulate this by going into your boost controller. Let's see if we got one of those things. All right, this looks different in here than on my laptop because it's scaled differently. But that's not neither here nor there. But if you just took all these early numbers and pulled them down to simulate what happened when that thing spun the tire, and then throw the boost in it to simulate what happened, you could put that tune-up in the truck, not spin the tire, and do the same thing. You're going to wheelie because you're throwing tons of boost at it at a rate that's unacceptable for where the truck is at on the racetrack, right? It's kind of hard to explain how all this comes together. But what happens is if you get off track, when it comes back on track, it can really overwhelm everything that you're trying to do. And that's another thing we can look at. Let's look at the pitch data here for these two guys. Converter pressure off, drive shaft off. All right, look at this. Right here at about, if you look at 1.314, the pitch for the two passes are virtually identical, but that's where they diverge. After that, the good pass, we keep on going down, right? We're actually going to negative pitch because the rear of the truck is separating so much and kind of driving the front down, right? And we can talk about that on another day, whether or not we believe in that phenomenon. But on the pass where we wheelie, we keep going to the moon, right? So you can see right here with this is VPS data, where there's a divergence at exactly basically 1.34 seconds. That's where things go sideways. And if you look at that spot, we are 200 RPM ahead in engine power, or in the engine RPM, which is your effective power. That's really all that determines how fast this thing is going, right? RPM, that determines how hard we're pushing on that converter at that point in time, right? Now, the boost at that point is 2 pounds higher. That's part of the reason that thing's flashing up so high. It's more than just the boost. We're kind of doing things to the converter that we would not normally do by letting the motor slam back up against it instead of steadily pushing on it out of the hole, right? And maybe we'll talk to a torque converter guy about that at some point on this super amazing TV show you're watching right now. But anyhow, that's enough for today. That's a quick discussion of why this truck wheelied and what we did to fix it so it doesn't wheel anymore, which is pretty much nothing. We literally changed nothing in the suspension. We did make a change in the rear of the truck, not even really suspension-wise, to get the thing hooked better, and that fixed our problem. The wheelie was pretty much entirely the result of wheel spin early on in the run. So anyhow, that's enough for today. We'll see you in a few days talking about some other nonsense. Whatever. That's enough.
End.